ahead and stop that. Let me clean up my desktop because, my gosh, it's a bunch of stuff. Wow, I'm sad. I said clean up the desktop and I hit one thing. Wow. Okay, so today, I don't know if we're going to be joined by Garrett, but it mostly should be just me. We're going to be talking about, basically going to be doing Strat Chat today. Of course, same bat time, same bat channel. Makes sense. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing Strat Chat today. We are doing it over ult management. So basically, I have a document set up right here, and I have some notes to go through so that I'm a little more organized and things are a little more written down as opposed to just in video format. So let's go ahead and start the this little mode. So yeah, we're going to be talking about ult management, and specifically we're going to be talking about the type of ults that exist, the charge rates of the ults, how to predict ults, and that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be also talking about how to use ults overall, how to charge ults, and then basically wrap it up with some closing stuff, and that's going to be it. Who do I want? Trying to figure out the best way to explain ult management. Who would be the best person? I don't think it really matters. It doesn't matter.
We're all soldiers now.
Nothing really matters to me. Yeah. Go and Genji then. I changed my mind. I'm not doing soldier. So yeah, let's go into the main little area and we're going to talk. Of course, we are live on twitch.tv/Dryden001. For people who are watching this recorded through YouTube. And pretty much you can join us here, twitch.tv/Dryden001. Well, yeah. Basically, you can join us every Friday, 5:30 Mountain Standard Time. We're going to be going through, and we have a topic for every single one. You can join us for that. But of course, if you miss our live streams, it is posted on YouTube, and so people on YouTube could see it. If you want to see it live, I suggest following. If you want to make sure you keep up to date on the ones we have done, and pretty much a bunch of other stuff that we might do, either on the YouTube channel or on Twitch. It's not going to always sync up, so I suggest subscribing or following both of them. But yeah, let's go ahead and go. So, ult management. Let me get my document up to the top. So we're going to be talking about the different types of ults. So first off, we have the damage ults, and the damage ult is best explained by Genji himself. The basic idea is this is how you're going to be getting kills in a fight, and are pretty much the most bang for your buck in the way of damage. The idea is to kill and basically get bonus off of that. Examples are Genji's Blade, Soldier's ult, Tracer's ult, basically ones that do damage. I do not put this under Diva's Bomb, and that's because it's avoidable. This is just stuff of, it makes killing people much faster. That's pretty much damage ults in a nutshell. I suggest running at least 1 to 2 damage ults in a team. The one is if you are pretty good at just focus killing by itself, but it at least gets you a team win fight if your team enables you to be able to kill everyone. That's the idea. Is theoretically, at the highest level of gameplay, especially like Overwatch League and stuff, everyone who uses a damage ult has the capabilities of getting a total team wipe by themselves. So the idea is that that's what brings to you. Next one is the enabling / zoning ultimates, and these are basically characterized by ults that help out other ults or helps out the team in a way where it puts them in a good position. So example, Diva Bomb basically enables your team to be in a space the other team can't be in. Reinhardt doesn't kill anyone with his Earth Shatter, but it stuns them. Mei, her ult freezes them. Graviton Surge is a great example. It sticks them all into one spot, and so what you want to do most of the time is combo your damage ults and your enabling ults. And sometimes in some situations, enabling ults are more valuable than damaging ults because your team is smart enough to actually do this all on their own. Of course, next one is supplementary ults, and these are my least favorite ults. And these are ones that I don't like in the game, and it's mainly because they try to be a certain type of ult, but have so little value in that ult that you just use them whenever, and they provide a little bit of help, but it's not highly impactful. So ults like these, I believe Brigitte's almost borderline this ult. You could call it maybe a defensive ult in certain situations. Mercy's ult at the moment. Moira's ult is definitely supplementary. We have Orisa's ult. Basically ults that don't have a huge impact. Widowmaker's ult is pretty big in this. They won't get you free kills. They basically help out in the middle fight. They won't win a team fight. You'll never be like, oh, we lost that team fight because Widow had her ult. It's not going to happen. So these are just supplementary. I suggest running 1 to 2 maximum. So meaning you're running the character, not the ult most of the times, unless the ult charges fast. That's why there's the Moira comp. Is the ult charges fast, and you can get that supplementary out, and it edges you out of the fight early on. But besides that, low impact. Next one is my favorite. It is the defensive ult category, and this is one that I think needs to be in the game a lot more because and in different formats, and it's just because it's so much centered around the meta that it's just insane. There's so few of them. At the moment, we only have 2 definitive, and it's Zenyatta and Lucio's ult. A possible third, and that third is, of course, Brigitte. That's a possible third, and that's because we're not really sure how her ult impacts a fight. I know in my testing it's very similar to Beat Drop, but has some drawbacks to it. So it'll most definitely be a supplementary ult. Brigitte will be. If it can be a defensive ult, that's just if it's a little more powerful than and has impact. So defensive ults are basically direct counters to damaging ults, or basically enabling ults. But that's if the enabling ult puts them in a position. So like Graviton Surge, you use the defensive ult and basically win the fight out because they can't follow up with enough damage. It basically prevents your team from dying, and that's how that ult helps. It's very impactful in the game, and basically at the moment, there's not going to be a meta in which you can't have at least one defensive ult. And the only reason why it won't be is if Zenyatta and Lucio are nerfed so hard into the ground that it's just not even worth having a defensive ult. So that's a big thing there. Mercy's ult used to be defensive ult, but it is turned into a supplementary ult because it doesn't save that many people from fights anymore. So that is the different types of ults. Let's move on to charge rate. Charge rate's going to be a pretty quick one. It's basic charge rate. You can look up a lot of stuff on this. I'm going to give you a basic rundown because it's not too big of a deal. First thing you need to know is that Symmetra and Tracer's ult charge rate are fastest. Symmetra's is by far the fastest charge rate. And then there's a couple of them down below that you can supercharge or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. The slowest charge rates are like Lucio, Zarya, and Orisa. Basic setups. There's a couple of them that could get close, but not really that important. And so that's pretty much the gist with the charge rate. So that's that's basic ult knowledge. Now let's go into the actual ult management section. Okay, so first of all, how do you predict ult management? And so the idea behind of it is people will call it different names, but the most people will call it game sense, and it's basically you understand when certain things are going to happen in the game, and you know how things work in the game, and you can react to it accordingly. So ult management is all about game sense and building that game sense, and I'm going to be trying to increase that ability for you and kind of explain how certain things work. So first of all, the first ult is the hardest to figure out when it's going to happen. But it's not about finding out when it's going to happen, it's about finding who is going to have it. And so that's where you basically go into basic ult charge rates. And theoretically, you would run into Symmetra has her ult first. So that means that that's the first one you're going to have to worry about. So that means you want to kill the Symmetra first. Then you're like, oh, well, they have a Tracer. So the Tracer's probably going to have their first ult up. And that's the one we have to worry about. And the basic rule of thumb is that usually in a team, the team is even enough, or if they're not even, but they're working together, they'll actually be a little more even than you think. So what's going to happen is you can basically gauge the first ultimate, and then you can predict the rest of the ultimates based off of how fast the first one charged. So, for example, you go into a team fight, and you're like, okay, the first guy who's going to have their ultimate is Junkrat, followed shortly by Reinhardt, and you're like, okay, Junkrat is running away and is going to hide. We see him about to hide. That means he's about to ult. He ults, and you go, okay, Reinhardt's close to his ultimate. And you can figure out some ways to predict his ultimate a little bit too. Some of them are surefire, some of them are not surefire ways, but are possible looking into it. So you can also figure this out of when they're going to ult through their history. So if you are able to scout the team that you're about to play, or scout the player you're about to play, or have played against that player before, you can gauge their ult charge rate depending on. And also the ult charge rate depends on how they are getting their ult charge. So let's talk about loss versus win dynamics. Basically with ult charging, there's a whole idea of if you lose a fight, you'll have about 10%, on average, 10% less ult charge than the team that won. Of course, there can be some ways where this is different, where if you're running a Moira tank comp, you'll find that usually the Moira might have the ult, and the rest of them are 10% lower. But the main basic idea is that if you're mirroring characters and you lose a fight, you have 10% less ult charge. 10 to 20% usually. And so that's where you can go, okay, so I'm playing, let's say, Lucio, and we just lost a fight. No ults were used at all, and they have a Lucio on their side. I am 80% to ult. That means that their Lucio is between 90 and 95% ult, and that means that he's going to have his fight, not have his fight, but have his ult towards the beginning of the fight, and that's where you're going to have to worry about it. And that's where you can go, hey, Lucio has his ult then. That's a pretty basic way to figure that out. It's pretty much almost guaranteed. There is, of course, the wildcard picks, and we'll be covering those. So the wildcard picks are, and I'll cover this one, ult pairing. So it's something that I call, it's very interesting. It's a cool way to figure out if they have ult or not. Basically, if you are in a fight, and let's just use the Lucio example again, because this will happen with healers. And basically what happens is you're in the fight for long enough, and you're basically watching your other half and figuring out what they are doing. And a lot of the times you'll notice that the other half is near successful to you. And if the fight goes on for long enough that you get your Lucio ult, odds are that the other Lucio has the ult too, because the 10% ult charge is when a team wins a fight, not when they're stalemated on a fight. So that means that you should be averaging the same amount of ult as the other person within about 4%. And especially if you're in ranked and they are matching you up, you should have the same ult charge. So, and you'll notice this, is commonly you'll be in the first fight, you'll get up the Zenyatta ult, you ult right as the other Zenyatta ults. And that's because you've both been doing the same kind of stuff. And you can kind of figure that out. You're like, hey guys, I just got this ult, that means so-and-so has their ult. Or you can just basically say, hey, look, Lucio has ult. And that's because it's your job to figure out what your other half has in ult perspective. It's really easy to figure that out. Now for another wild card is ult boosting. And this is a fun dynamic. And the job to figure this out is basically everyone, but it's mainly going to fall on the tanks. And the idea is that ults will all charge linearly at the same rate based off of how good the team is. So basically, in most rank play, you'll be very average. So you can figure that they're all charging at the same rate, and then it kind of becomes uneven with win or losses, and that's it. But the wild cards are characters that basically get a lot, not characters necessarily, but players that get more value than they usually should. So a good example is a Reaper that completely tears through 2 tanks. You're like, hey, let's move him up to the top of the pile. Who's going to have ult next? And you could pretty much figure out that he's going to have ult very soon. And you can gauge that. And that's where the tanks are like, hey, and don't be shy about it. Hey, the Reaper just ripped into me. He probably has ult fairly soon. And so that's where you guys could be like, oh, okay, so he's getting an ult boost off of that, which basically means he's getting more ult. If someone gets nano boosted, you can be like, hey, so-and-so has higher ult charge because they got nano boosted. Another good example is Zarya on high charge is very dangerous because she can get ult faster than a Zarya with no charge. Pretty basic stuff. So yeah, that's the wild card pick, and that is the hardest to figure out, but it's based off of your knowledge on how the other players are performing. And again, you can use this to gauge with your own team. Basically, if you follow these rules, you'll almost guaranteed figure out who has ult and who doesn't have ult within about 10%. And which is a pretty good deal, since 10% is basically if you have ult at the beginning of the fight or a little bit in the beginning, a little bit later, but it's still in the beginning of the fight. So that's the big stuff. That's the big stuff out of the way. Now we're gonna go through some nitty gritty stuff. We have positioning with ults, and so this is how you can predict ults as well when they're going to be used, not when they're up. And so, good example. Let's go down. I put a couple characters down on my list, and this is So first of all, I have Pharah. Pharah is very interesting. I'll kind of show with Genji. What you'll notice is the Pharah will get closer to your team, and then she'll suddenly drop and then ult. And that's the basic idea, is when she's dropping, boom, stunner or whatever, she's most likely going to use ult there. Another thing is if she starts putting herself behind a wall like this, and she's just hovering right here, and then boom, or if you see her up on top of a building or something like that, basically hovering above your team. That's a good way to figure out if someone's going to ult, is if they're hovering above your team. With Pharah, quite literally. Reaper, very similar. If he is like here on the high ground and is just standing up here above the team, you can tell that the moment he does this, he's going to ult, and that's it. And so, yeah, that's a good way to figure out. Other way is if the Reaper, and I'm going to act as if I'm attacking, if the Reaper just charges in and then Wraith forms and starts getting closer to you, boom, that's another way. So, yeah, that's pretty good to know. Sombra, you'll see a translocator being thrown into the middle of your team. That's pretty easy to figure out as well. And that's just pretty much basic stuff. A tip when you're getting ulted by a Sombra is use your abilities before she ults. So abilities that last for a little bit, and the best one is like Moira's Orb, that kind of bounces around. Use it and it won't go away. Orisa, if you halt or fortify, it won't go away, and all that stuff. Next one, of course, is Tracer, and Tracer is actually very interesting. So if a Tracer is... So let's say I'm attacking again, and there's a Tracer just like right here, and she dashes this way, she's going to ult. You hear dashes as you're walking in, she's going to ult someone. Or if I'm attacking and I'm a Tracer and I start running straight towards someone, I'm going to ult. And the best example is... Ooh, I want to... Let me... Oh my gosh. Jumped a little too high. Let me go Tracer so I can show you guys. I'm going to move on to Junkrat. Junkrat disappears, he's going to ult. That's basically the best example. If he walks around the corner and you don't see him, he's going to ult. Especially if he's walking around the corner for no reason. Okay. So the Tracer stuff is if she does this. And you'll notice this with the least skilled Tracers. So the less a Tracer is skilled, the more you'll see this. And it's this. And then she'll finish by walking to her target. So you'll notice that. She'll dash and then walk, boom. But most of the time you'll see boom and then sidestep. But if she's walking towards deliberately, then you know she's about to ult. And that's really good to know. Zen's, this is perfect because she'll give you a window of opportunity to right click if she's trying to get into position and then flick up, and then you could sidestep or whatever and dodge it, because she feels like she has to throw it sooner. Especially the second time she tries to stick you, she's going to try to do it farther away, and it has a less chance of her actually being successful. Fun fact. Ryan? Ryan is pretty simple because his arm's just going to go straight in the air, and you can stall that. The other thing to notice is and you'll just notice of just like mannerisms. Let me see if I can imitate some. So a good Reinhardt will stop using fire strikes when he has ult. That's the big thing, is people who are good will stop trying to do damage when they have ult. People who don't have ult will be trying to do damage. So you won't see a lot of poke from people who are good when they have ult. So Reinhardt, what's basically going to happen is he's going to be and if he starts positioning himself a little closer, kind of doing this, he's trying to bait out the other Reinhardt, but if he's trying to position himself so that he can hit more of your team, then that's a red flag. And then the other thing is if you see his hammer go up and you can just boom right into him. I find that it's really fun as Brigitte to just basically duo the Rhine, and the moment he tries to ult, you just hear his voice line, boom, right into him, and stun him. So that's basically the stuff with Reinhardt. And it's also a thing of just getting used to tricking out Rhines and forcing the ult as well. Zarya's will get very aggressive, and basically what you'll see is like she'll jump in, and be like right in the front, bubble herself up, boom, ult straight down, and then shooting. She'll also try to stay away from the diva. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Lucio, you'll basically see him lift up off the ground. That's a good way. Every Lucio ults differently. So the best way is just to learn off of animation, because a lot of people play Lucio differently. And let me get closer. Okay, next part is countering ultimates. And so this is where we're going to be talking about... So we talked about how people get ult. We talked about how people use ults. And now we're going to be talking about how you can counter those used ults. So you can use ults to stop damage. So like for example, if Genji Nano Blades, boom, ult, he's on his butt, and we just kill him. Pretty basic, pretty nice and easy. Pretty good to know. So you can do that. The tried and true defensive ult is ones as well, where Soldier ults and then your Zenyatta ults, or Graviton Surge and your Zenyatta ults. Pretty easy. You basically want to mitigate damage and stop whoever is doing that damage. So good one that I like to tell is for Diva players, and it's something that a lot of them don't really do. They treat Diva's ult as a damage ult, which the higher you go, the less it'll act like, and you'll end up getting a lot more ults that just get no value. And so what you want to do is you want to use the ults to zone out damage. And the idea is for example, if you're on a point like this one, and you're trying to control this point, and you hear Genji pull out his blade, Diva, boom, ult on the ground, steps back, and then the Genji has to either be suicidal or get away. And so that's where you can stop that. Same thing with Soldier ult. Pretty much tank ults are a good way to do that, except Orisa's. Orisa's doesn't do that. Okay, countering ults. Now let's just go into basic use of ults, of how to use them better. You want to pre-plan every ult. So if you're in an organized team or not, the higher you go, the more you'll see this, is ults aren't just thrown around. You don't ult when you think you need to. You don't ult when you basically almost want to, but you ult when you need to. And so the idea is you need to figure out how do you win the next fight and how do you lose the next fight. So a good example is, let's say we are on a team, we have Graviton Surge up, and we have, let's say, what would be a good ult? We have Graviton Surge and we have Earth Shatter. So we go, okay, how do we win this next fight? Okay, so we win by using Graviton Surge and killing everyone. Perfect. Okay. How do we do that? Well, we can Earth Shatter them if need be, but we'll be focusing on the Zarya. So the idea is you have an ult to win, and you have a backup ult. And the backup ult would be Reinhardt. So this is a good idea. But we have a problem. They have a Zenyatta ult on the other side. So how do we lose the fight? Okay, Zenyatta ults, Graviton Surge gets no value, we lose the fight. And then you go, okay, so how do we win that fight then? Well, we need to get rid of the Zenyatta ult. So what you do is you do one of two things. Either one, focus the Zenyatta so much. You want to just completely like freak him out, force him to use his ult, or die. If he dies, boom. You'll probably most go to with Reinhardt's Earth Shatter or whatever. Basically, you want to put the Zenyatta in a situation where he either dies or he ults. Once that happens, wait out the ult, and then you continue on, and that's how you win the fight. You basically remove ults that can cause you problems, and so that's a big way to do that. The next part is to learn how to lose the fight, and basically the best way is, if you can't win a fight, don't use ults. You don't need to use ults on a fight you're not going to win. 2, basically, if you're going to lose in a team kill, because and a lot of people will just be like, oh my gosh, he just got a 6-man kill off of that Earth Shatter. Congratulations. See if you can get out any more ults before you die, but you want to be a quick fight. If you're going to lose the fight, make it a quick fight, because the fight you want to win perfectly. And so the idea is you don't want them to charge ults fast enough, and you want to get ults out of the way. Because how it works is the longer a fight goes on, the more ults get charged. But the shorter the fight, the more ults get used. So what you want to do is you want to force them to use a ton of ults really, really fast, and you can have more ults in the bank. And that's what's called ult economy. And you're basically trying to meter and have more ults to win the next fight than the other team. Or put yourself in a position where you win the match. So that's why I say win the match, not the fight. Learn when to lose. On to that, don't stall with ults unless you have too many ults or out of time. So if you have 6 ults and you're stalling, I would say it's okay to maybe ult to stall to like 99% on King of the Hill, or a little bit close. But if you are not going to win the fight at all and stalling is pointless, so for example, if you're stalling on a point that they've already captured, stuff like that, doesn't matter. And if you're stalling and you already have ult and you're not using that ult, then you don't need to be stalling in the first place because you're just giving them ult charge. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. Of figure out when you're stalling and how you're stalling. Okay, moving on to how to charge ults. Woo! Game lasted too long. Bummer. Okay. I might just not. We might go in if we need to. Yeah, let's just go to Hero Gallery. Okay. So, how to charge ults. Basically, you only gain ult charge through healing or damage. You also gain ult charge over time, but the main source is going to be through healing and damage. So, for example, a great example. So, Brigitte's healing ability, her E ability, gives 150 health and or 75 armor. And what happens is if it goes over, it gives the rest in armor. You only get ult charge through the healing she does. You give armor, you do not get ult charge. So if you want to get your ult faster, you heal. You don't give armor, but you give armor to people who are going to put themselves in a bad position and you have no one else to heal. That's basically the idea with that. So pretty much you want to do damage and want to get healing. And the best way to do damage to charge your ult the fastest is just headshots. And just, boom, hitting those headshots over and over and over again. And that is why pros get their ults faster, because they're hitting more headshots. Doing more damage equals doing more ults. Next part is don't Don't poke if you have ult. So the idea is you have a poke battle at the beginning of the fight. If you are poking and doing damage to characters, that is bad if you already have ult. You're doing poke damage to do one of 2 things. Well, one of 3 things. My bad. The first thing is to zone out, which in a lot of cases aren't going to happen that much. The only time you'll see that is with a Widowmaker. And the idea is you're not going to hit shots, you're just going to make them freak out at you. 2 is you're doing damage to shields to break the shields. And then 3, you're poking because you're trying to get damage for your next ult. You're trying to get ult before you start the fight or as fast as you can. Likewise, don't get killed if they need ult. So if you know that they have offensive ults that are lower down on the charge level, and you, or something to that matter, and you're getting poke damage by any one of them, then you're giving them ult charge. Likewise, if you're doing poke damage to them, then their supports are getting higher ult charge. So there's a trade-off. Damage to you, higher ult charge for your supports. Damage to them, higher ult charge for their supports. Damage you do, higher ult charge for your damagers, and all that stuff. So if you have ults in any of those, change accordingly. Next one is doing a dry push. And the idea behind this is you go in to get ults. You don't go in to use ults. You don't go in to win the fight. And that's basically when I say learn to lose. And you go in and you basically, what do I have with Brigitte? I'm sorry, I'm getting ADD. You learn to lose within the fight and get ult charge because of that. You force ults out of them, and then you come back stronger, and that's the idea. Okay, and I think we're gonna start wrapping up. Of course, I am taking questions live on Twitch, and I'm also taking questions on YouTube later down the road. So if you see this on YouTube and you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. I will answer them. It can be any question on Overwatch, and I will be happy to answer them. And I'll, of course, answer any questions in the Twitch chat. And I'll put it in any questions. Yeah. So I just posted in Twitch chat for any questions. Okay, now wrapping up. Big things with ults is understanding ult economy, knowing how you're going to win and how are you going to lose, and planning accordingly. And if you're going to lose and get value out of it. And that's a big thing. Because all you need to win is 2 fights. You need to win one fight to get the point. You need to win the second fight to end the point. And that's a big deal with that. And overall, the biggest thing is ult discipline. Know when you need to ult and know when you shouldn't ult or whatever. And I just realized I'm on I'm on a different aspect ratio, so I'm recording weird. Oh well, I don't care. Didn't really need all that much anyway, so it's not too big of a fall. But the basic thing is just ult discipline. Know when to get ults, know when ults are gonna come in. Just getting that knowledge down. And overall, for everyone, it is everyone is responsible for ults. Because you're responsible for keeping track of your ult and your counterpart's ults, and then basically the shot caller guy who's going to be saying, okay, what's going on. Basically, the main guy is going to be figuring out how are we going to win the next fight. But it doesn't mean that you can't be thinking of that either. So just challenging yourself. Basically looking up. The best way to do this is to watch like Overwatch League and watch the ult charges, and you'll see it. You'll see everything works about the same, and then you'll be like, hey, Jonak is doing really, really, really good. He's probably going to have ult sooner than everyone else. Oh, hey, look. Jonak has a little bit higher ult than the other Zenyatta by a decent margin because he's just doing amazing. Or so-and-so died really fast. They're probably not going to have ult because they couldn't charge ults that much. And that's a big thing as well, is when someone dies and how they get ult charge and all that stuff. If someone dies early, then they don't have as much ult charge as you are by a farther margin. But if the fight just ends all at once, then things are a little linear in that fashion. So that's going to be it for me today. Anyone have any questions in chat? I'm going to give a couple of minutes. Besides that, I'm going to double check Discord and make sure. Yeah, I think we're good on Discord. I always check Discord for questions because you never know. It might be. But yeah, so I'm doing this in conjunction because we do have team open practices tonight. And so if you're watching who am a part of the team, see you at 7 tonight, Friday. But besides that, yeah, I think we're done with questions. So yeah, that was pretty fast. Holy crap. Yeah, we did 40 minutes. You know, I think writing things down before I actually say it makes things go much faster and much smoother. I like it better. So yeah, leave comments, questions down below. Make sure to like the video if you like it. Basically, the more people that see this, the better Overwatch is going to be overall because the less you're going to have to teach them. That's basically the idea with these videos. So follow if you want to stay up to date on Twitch. If you're on Twitch, check out my YouTube so you can get up to date with that stuff. If you're on YouTube, check out Twitch because I don't always cross-post. So that's a big thing there. But yeah, thanks for watching, and bye.